June 24th minutes.
Oh, June 24th, July 22nd, Finance Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from June 24th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Yeah, motion to approve the minutes from June 24th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Move to the second item on the agenda, the DWNA budget presentation. So, turn it over to Courtney.
Sure, well, you've got all three of us, and again, as we kind of talked about it, it's more of a kind of, I guess, discussion. I know with the new administration in place, there's just kind of questions as to who DWA has been and who we are. Just for a little bit of reference, Dan and myself met with Matt Beck, who's on our board of directors, with Mayor Willis, to kind of talk about what this year's funding looks like, since we did receive payment this year, but it was from last year, it was for 2023. So essentially what we're just looking for is to hopefully be approved for that $30,000 that we usually receive in the year. It used to be done in 4 installments of $7,500. I was asked to put together, we collectively actually, with Drew's help there, put together just kind of what 2022 all the way to what the projected through 2024 looks like.
Can I back up just a second?
Of course.
I'm the one that requested the
Sure.
discussion and the review. And what led up to this was, as you mentioned, Courtney, at the beginning of this year, there was a request to allocate or appropriate dollars for DWA from 2023. We got the request in January, January, February meeting. We approved that, and at the time, I had said, hey, is there an opportunity to see the financials for DWA? And the response that I got was, no, John, don't worry about it. We're not funding DWA for the balance of 2024. We're done. We've taken care of that, we're done. So I kind of put it aside and went, okay. It probably doesn't make sense to, if the city is moving away from funding DWA. And then I had heard from Matthew Deck in a passing that there was gonna be another request for this year. And that was the first time that I'd heard it, and it hasn't been presented to the council yet. So I said, before we do any of that, it's not in my mind, it's not necessarily the dollar amount, but it's to understand where are the dollars going that have been invested and how is DWA financed throughout the year. So that was the purpose, and that's when Matthew got with you and said, can we put this together? Okay?
Great.
So that's kind of what led up to this. And we thought it made sense to put it in front of the finance committee first and review before it goes in front of the council, so that there's at least a decent amount of knowledge and background.
Sure, and I appreciate that background, because we didn't really have that, so in the discussion, it was verbal, of course. So it's verbal as to, are we at least good through this year, because we need to know, first and foremost, we wanna make sure we're supporting our staff. But also too, we've made commitments and we didn't wanna make commitments to people until we knew for sure what we were working with as far as funding. So we have gone ahead and made commitments to 2 other organizations in the sum of $55,000. So that's why we definitely wanted to be here today, to answer any questions that we can at this moment and see how we can proceed.
But I do wanna caution you in that nobody has said that $30,000 was going to be appropriated this year. There was never that discussion anywhere. And so I really struggle with making commitments to organizations when the dollars aren't in hand and there's nothing in writing. I don't think there's ever been a situation where dollars have been appropriated without something that comes before the council and gets approved, right? So the days of handshakes and head nods, I think has to kind of come to an end, and we have to do it correctly.
With you there too, because that also protects us, it protects everybody, and again, with the new administration, there's new mindsets and people that are not quite sure what's been going on, so that's where we're here to, again, provide a little clarification, and hopefully we can move forward. And
When did we have that meeting with Scott? Daniel, were you there?
I'd have to
I was
it
at the meeting at West Fork with you guys.
Yeah.
No, but we had one
That was not-
upstairs.
That was
not
upstairs.
there.
I forgot the specific date, but yes, it was Dan, Scott Willis and Matt Deck and I.
But it was in this year.
It was this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that might have created a little confusion.
And again,
It's no
to your
time.
point, it was verbal, so, you know, and now, right, should we approach that differently? Yes, 100%, so that's where we're here.
And how long you been in this seat that you're doing?
December 1st.
So appreciate you putting this together, cause I know past councils, people have asked for this before, and I appreciate you putting this together.
Yeah, well, and again, Drew is our director of finance, and I mean, he is great at his job, and you know, he has been a huge proponent of putting this together as well, but yeah, and I did provide, so you did receive the financial documents via email. I can also circulate I just put a little packet together of a little just synopsis again of who we are, just some highlights for those people who are not familiar. I can email that as well.
And Drew, just like when we're looking at budgets or looking at additional appropriations in a calendar year and things like that, what's your guys' current cash on hand balance at this time?
Cash on hand currently, just one moment, I can pull it up.
And
as
I know you
current
probably
day.
got committed expenditures and things like that, but.
Yeah, no problem, I can pull that up real quick.
While he's doing that, are you familiar, the new council guys here, with what DWA has done the last few years? At all?
I'm fairly familiar with it. I mean, I was with the city when DWA was formed originally.
Well, but I'm talking since in the last 4 or 5 years, in terms of what we've acquired, what we do with the money we get, how we're funded, how we're funded.
I'd
What
like
goes to-
a better understanding if.
So can I'll just give you a
Yeah.
1 minute synopsis.
That'd be awesome.
I got involved with it 6.5 years ago, I guess. Somebody asked me to go and do this thing, and they were running it, and Teresa Skelton was the head of it. With an assistant, the city was giving somewhere around $50,000 a year to the organization. They ran farmer's market, party on the patios, some little race down the hill, like soapbox derby kind of thing, and this and that.
Buildings.
Westfield Rocks the Fourth was, there's so some of these major ones that then became bigger things.
Little things that they were doing, Andy was come up with a way to fund it through, I said like 50 or so thousand directly from the city, and then rent from one of the buildings, which at that point was only a third of that building where the West Fork whiskey is. So they weren't getting much out of that. Probably breaking even to losing a little money every year. Most of the money was going to Teresa and her assistant and et cetera. And Daniel, you were on the board then, so
Yeah.
you know that. But I guess it's almost 7 years ago now, we came up with this other idea to have this dinner party on Union, which I thought would raise a little bit more money and give us a little bit more flexibility. So 7 years later, when Drew gives you the answer, do we have money in the bank? Yeah, we have money in the bank. We have money in the bank simply because of that one event. It raises a lot of money, and we've used that money to pay for the deficits that we would have from regular operations. And the rest of the money we've used, except for what's in the bank now, to help things in Westfield. The landscape plan, the playhouse, the lights in the plaza. It's a few $100,000 that we've donated, including the big city plan for the whole downtown plan.
Right.
So that's a synopsis of what we've done. We used to run the farmer's market, that ended at the end of the winter. Correct?
Yeah, we worked, so Nick, who was director of markets at the time, he's no longer, I mean, that was his sole job, is to part-time work for us. He did the handover, so he helped train, get all of the vendors back in place, provide all the signage, everything that we kind of had, and then worked the first market just to make sure everything was ready to go going forward. And I did put, just so you can see, or just so you know what pages, sorry, they're not numbered, but you can see downtown investment. We've actually listed it out by year, some of the big projects that happened that year.
So, John, the 30,000 we get from the city, the net of about 22 to 25,000 we net from the houses, the two buildings, I should say, not the houses. With party on the patios and paying Drew and paying Courtney and office expense, et cetera, would give us an annual deficit of somewhere around $10,000 a year. You know, again, that's just the operations. And we were in the dinner party on Union, which we kind of look as a separate entity in terms of the way we've looked at the revenue side of it. It's given us this bonus money, which we've tried to use to reinvest into the city to do different things. So your funding helps us operate as a function, as an entity. Then the other side of the fence is that, you know, we've been kind of creative to create a concept for a downtown that didn't exist. But we also used to have the function of kind of like what they call it, where we looked, when people want to do something with a building, and they'd come to us, like a Broadville Village Association, what was it called?
The streetscape or Main Street or right?
No, the other part where people would come and they'd present their idea for their building and.
Facade.
Oh, the facade, yeah.
No, but what was that called, that organization within the DWA?
Grand Junction Task Force.
Grand Junction Task
Yes.
Group, yeah. So
Yes, that one.
that kind of existed,
Thanks,
Yeah.
Drew.
No problem.
Yeah.
that kind of existed as a bit, they used to have those meetings to do that, which was kind of a precursor to going to the RDC or something like that. So that's kind of the history, that's where it's at. So now that we just do the party hall and patio, and we're working on, obviously, this concept here to build a downtown, we think there's more ideas and more reasons to have DWA than there ever's been. But I guess that kind of gives you a synopsis of where we've been and what we're doing. And without that $30,000, obviously, we'd run a complete deficit. If it wasn't for the dinner party on Union, wouldn't be able to function.
Our current cash on hand is $279,569.83.
And then again, if you review the financials, it will explain where monies are going.
Yeah, so I've had an opportunity to look through this and, yeah, you've got the projected, you've got the same one up here now. So I understand that, I mean, looking at the financials that, in 2022, 23, and probably 2024, 2022 and 23, operating revenue coming in is less than expenses going out as far as the rentals, farmer's market, party in the patio, et cetera. Where the real dollars are made is the event on Union Street, right? But it's all one entity, correct? It's really, I mean, I know you separated it on the sheet here, cause you said total without, party on Union Street.
Yeah.
And then you add the dinner party, but at the end of the day, it's all income coming in, right? That's used for whatever those expenses are during the year. And then below that, you've got the donations that are made to worthy causes, definitely worthy causes. But I'm just scratching my head as, if I was a business owner, or somebody running a business, I wouldn't spend more than I take in. And that's kind of where my head is at, as we're potentially making commitments to organizations and events.
Well, we're not spending more than we take in. We know we have the money to give it.
Yeah.
We're trying to run it. We're trying to run the business side of it as a business, and then the part that gave extra money, we were able to give to good functions around Westfield.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Dan, wholeheartedly. I'm just questioning then why, if you've got the money to operate, and you're showing a profit here, then why are you coming back and asking for $30,000 more for the balance of the year? That's really what this comes down to for me. And I don't know where Kurt or Patrick's hit, but I know other council members have kind of said the same thing. You've got income coming in from the rentals, you've got income coming in from the party, and I like what you're doing with the dollars, but there's no need for $30,000 from the city when you've got the money to pay it. And that's all I'm saying. That's really where my question is coming from. So, and there was no agreement in place in the beginning of the year to fund it further. There may have been a discussion in the mayor's office, but that's not, the council hasn't been privy to that. And again, that's kinda how you operate a business. You spend what you can spend without going into debt, you don't come back and ask for more, in most businesses. So,
I mean, I think for us, I mean, just like there's a new administration with the city, there's a new administration with us too. Yes, I was there for a brief time prior, but at the same time, I know Dan has really been a part of this along the way. And a lot of individuals, ones that are still on the board, not on the board, have put blood, sweat, and tears into this and have really committed to putting back into the city for a very long time. And now we're very excited to finally take that to another level. So yes, understood, we didn't have anything signed. That's why we're here today, to hopefully see how we can pursue that going forward. And part of the discussion was, what does the DWA look like? That's what Scott directly asked me. And I said, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and try to answer for something that I'm not equipped to answer right now, because I'm new to this role and trying to evaluate what we've done, where we go, alongside Dan, of course. I mean, Dan is a huge part of why this exists. And so we're trying to identify what does that look like going forward, and how can we work alongside you with those dollars and put them to a good cause that makes sense. So we've been kind of picking that, and I know we've worked with previous administration and kind of talked to them about what made sense. And I think that we would love that opportunity to do it again, because right now the downtown is finally gonna be something. I mean, when DWA started in 2008, I mean, it was just, the downtown was very different from what it is now. So we've kind of been along that road and want to see that through kind of in the next phase.
what is the, again, I'm asking this question because I don't know.
Yeah.
What is the difference, or, yeah, what are the differences between what the chamber does, what
Welcome.
thank you, Welcome Westfield and DWA do? It seems like there's overlap. And when I had this discussion when I was running for office a year ago, I asked the question. And a lot of people had said to me, well, there is overlap, John, and the goal is to combine forces and or have one organization that's really driving what's going on in Westfield. Otherwise, there's potential as to what you guys are doing versus the chamber's doing versus what Westfield Welcome is doing.
Yeah.
And again, I never got a straight answer because I don't know if anybody really knew the answer.
Yeah, if I could add maybe a little bit to this as well. Like John said, when a lot of his councils were running, we were asking questions. It's our job. We're supposed to be doing that. And so, same thing, we were seeing overlap in prior administrations, kind of baby, and where's it gonna go in the future? So we had those conversations with Scott where this would eventually go. And when we met last fall before we were elected officials, we were hearing that DWA is gonna go away. And then we get into the beginning of this year, and it's probably gonna last the rest of this year, or 6 months, then the rest of the year, and there'll probably be a request, okay? So that's kind of where we stood, thinking it was gonna go away, but at the same time, I see some of the benefit DWA has brought, and I still think long-term, it's important and vital, whether it's a separate committee, whether it's some other organization, or whether it's embedded within the chamber, to have that downtown neighborhood association, because the chamber represent all businesses in Westfield. The DWA is more focused on their downtown area and how can that benefit the downtown as well as the residents of Westfield and support the outlying businesses. So I see the differentiating responsibilities of each of those organizations, but kind of like John was saying too, there's overlapping, but how can there be some uniformity to have this thing going forward? That's why I asked the question, how much, is it in the funds right now? Because, we were all under the, understanding there wouldn't be any more allocation of funds this year.
And let's assume that, DWA moves forward, right? The message also was that the city would be taking over the rentals, the 2 rental properties, right? So that was gonna happen, I think, by June 1, but it sounded like the mayor had mentioned that they weren't quite ready to do that yet. There were too many things on the city's plate and they couldn't do it.
There's also some legal things that you can and cannot do that made it more palatable that DWA did it as opposed to you. I'm not sure what those things are.
Yeah, we hadn't heard that part of it, but that you could very well be
Rules, I think, was part of it.
accurate on that. So assuming DWA moves forward, there's what's the rental, there's 80
It's about 24,000 net a year.
25,000 a year that will need to be made up some other way, right?
If the DWA goes away, and it can go away, I don't need to do all the work I do. If it goes away, if it goes away, so does all of the money. DWA is a net positive to the city. Welcome Westfield costs you $1 million a year. DWA costs you 30,000 and a couple rentals. The net given back from DWA to the city so far, and it may change, you guys are a little sharper group than we had before here in terms of different stuff, but the few $100,000 that we've given back to everything, including the landscape plan, hell, you wouldn't have MKSK if it wasn't for DWA. All those different things are all things that came through DWA. I personally, I'll say I don't care, I'm neutral on the whole thing. But if it does go away, all that goes away with it, so.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's anybody in this room arguing or disagreeing that DWA has done some great things, right? And some organizations, some charitable organizations in the city have benefited significantly from the contributions made. And I guess I have, really two requests, is what does DWA, Chamber of Commerce and Westfield Welcome look like moving forward? Because that was kind of the understanding that we had been given, that DWA was going away. If they're not going away, okay, but let's understand what each organization will be doing moving forward and what they look like. That's number one. And then number two is, we gotta run this like a business. And like I said, when you don't have the money, you don't keep spending the dollars. Now, it sounds like you have money to fund.
We can fund what we've donated, okay? We don't have a problem with that. We know we have money to do that. We just wanted to we're looking at, as you used to business, we're trying to run the business side of it and say we have enough money to run the business on the revenue from the rentals and the donation from the city of the 30,000 plus the rentals. That runs the business. That pays for salaries, pays for office, pays for this and that. The thing, and the parties on the patio, which the concept of that is to entertain the different people within the city 4 times, 5 times a year at a party that's functional to everyone invited from some working group of people from the city. The dinner party on Union was kind of a bonus. It was used to do special projects and do extra things for the city. The dinner party on Union has been, and Courtney's doing a hell of a job, Drew's doing a hell of a job in terms of doing this, but that's basically run through been kind of run personally almost through my side of life. I've got a lot of the sponsors, got a lot of this and that, and did that through just through my work, we'll still call it that. Like I said, we don't care one way or the other if that's the case, but I do think there's a compelling reason to have a DWA or a Main Street, which we've studied Main Street pretty hard, Kurt, by the way. And don't see a whole lot of difference between DWA and Main Street, and I don't see any reason to join some large organization again.
Not, Carmel does not, and at this current, so I met with Garrett Conway with Okra. I'm meeting with the executive director for Pendleton, because this was all moving quickly, because again, we were all under different understanding too, so I expedited as much as I could, but I'm meeting with the executive director. He runs granted different city size, but he runs the chamber along with their Main Street as to seeing what the feasibility is if it's us, if that were to be a direction. And then also too with Noblesville, I'm meeting with the executive director there of the Main Street. So
You may wanna take a look at Franklin too, cause Franklin, Indiana, which has a pretty interesting.
So I know you guys have other things to do besides to see with us.
it takes time is what I was gonna say, is that it's not that we're not for that, but there's a lot of nuances. And actually, one of the main things, and Garrett would stand by this too, is the support from the municipality if we ever decide to go that route, or if it's somebody else. Because it takes time, you have to meet all of the criteria to be able to do that, and you're not actually eligible for some of those grants until it's like a tiered process until you're at the last process. Now, the biggest grant that's every other year is $2 million. So if you look at kind of what we put just since 2022, yeah, I mean, is it a little bit more? 100%, but at the rate that we're going already, I mean, it's pretty.
You're talking about Okra grants?
Okra grants, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna hold my breath on that one too big.
So, and that was my other thing, is it is very
Very
steep,
good.
it's very steep competition. So I know that was a, well, if you
I
go
would
that.
I mean, we can do it, but I'm just telling you that
I'm
goes
with
to little places.
So we can get you guys out of your next deal here. We can live without the $30,000 this year. It's not gonna change our lives any. We have enough money in the bank, obviously, to get by. We're gonna have some more here coming up. we'd like you guys to consider the thought of how DWA could be a surviving entity and work in the future as we're building a downtown. And you're gonna have a reason for one. And the functions that could be good for the community are different than what Welcome Westfield does.
So Dan, just so we're kind of level set here, so rentals, Poindexter, who was acting as the city council attorney in December of last year, had a resolution, I believe, versus an ordinance, but it doesn't matter. The council passed it, it changed the management of those rentals. Am I incorrect, correct? Kind of, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, once we got our facilities
Correct.
department up and running, I mean, we're still.
So you have the rentals, you have revenue right now for this year, calendar year projected, January 1 of 24 through all of 24, 47, so a net of 36. But yet, over the last, let's say, 4 years, the MKSK plan, which clearly the mayor and the council and economic development and redevelopment commission, anybody and everybody in the city is clearly using. The city's paid you, if you will, or reimbursed DWA, not you, but DWA. It looks like
For part of it.
for part of it, only $34,755.81. So the total expenditure on the MKSK plan, it looks like it's well north of that. So, obviously, we see some other things, and thank you for having the detail, it's actually pretty helpful. I can't ever get good details from IPS, but I can always get it from the Westfield, Washington schools, just FYI, it's a good habit. So, but the pieces that I think we're trying to figure out is that, I think that December meeting in that council meeting, it was kind of presented as, hey, this kind of wraps up the city's engagement, if you will, with DWA. At least that was the takeaway, I think, of a couple councilors, obviously Councilor Dart and others as well. So that's the challenge, I think, of almost going back to the tape, if you will.
That was Scott, me, Mike Johns, and Poindexter.
Right.
So
Yeah, so that-
my walkaway take was different than that.
No, and then I'm just putting it out there.
I'm just telling you, I was in that meeting, and I was the
So,
only
no,
one here in that meeting.
I think most of us were either physically in that meeting in a pew, if you will, or if they weren't there, they were listening, and frankly, it's still on YouTube, right? So, I think that's the concern that some counselors were like, well, I thought that was all wrapped up or all concluded. I don't think there's any question about the merits or the benefits of Dinner Party on Union and all the other activities. I don't see, at least not for me. I think Curtis said, but not for me, and that's all I can speak on. So that's the piece that I think counselors are trying to figure out. Okay, what's going on with these rentals? The farmers market stuff, we think we got that figured out. And I think there's also probably some confusion on some of the other activities that are up there, whether it's Westfield and Lights and Party on the Patio and all those types of things. Who's running those and who's not running those as, you know, this year and as we move forward? Because I think there's some confusion on that, even amongst counselors and definitely the general public and my neighbors.
Yeah, I think that's really the ask
Yeah.
from me,
Yeah.
is if, Courtney, if you could, take the lead on bringing together, the chamber and DWA team and Westfield Welcome team and really say, effective January 1, 2025, here's what this organization's gonna do, here's what this organization's gonna do, and this one, because there is that overlap. And there is confusion, I think, by a lot of people. And if it makes sense to say DWA is still a viable entity that provides a lot of value to the community, boom, we move forward with it. But I just think we're in limbo and there's confusion on a lot of people's parts as to what each entity is doing. That's kind of where it is for me.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I can see too where some of that overlap, because like Westfield and Lights, like I feel like we would make donations to things, those expenses, like we bought these little like spinny Christmas trees, and it was like, was that a sponsorship or was that us just buying it? Like, I'm with you there, because even I was inside the doors and I'm like, I don't understand that. If we're gonna do a sponsorship to it, that's one thing, but to just buy things, or like the donut trail, we would sponsor the signage, or I like little stuff like that. I'm trying to think what else we did for donut trail, but it kind of all added up. And when I stepped down for both, frankly, was to reevaluate what our expenditures were and how we can continue to increase our revenue and get thrifty with that. So we can again put more into it, because some of this, I would argue, yes, right, why was it? What was the purpose behind it? But yeah, I'm with you there, and I think that's very feasible. But to quickly get to the difference between the chamber and DWA, because again, I will also say I didn't understand it when I was within those walls. I was kind of like away from all of that, the DWA part. And I understand it now, because with what's going on downtown, it's a beast in itself, and a really great beast. But there are businesses I'm working with, economic development, whether it's for the chamber side and just a business here in Westfield, or if it's a business in the downtown area, of being a resource to them, because right now is a time of transition. Whether you're here and you've been here for years, or you're new coming to the area, it is, how do we get through this time of transition? And how can we as DWA be a resource for just the downtown? So when I sit with, it's really to leverage the partnership with the chamber and our members, is when I sit down with someone, I represent both. And I kind of walk through, okay, what are their needs? What do they need from us? How can we assist them? And it's, okay, DWA is gonna be of assistance here, or the chamber is gonna be of assistance here. I know it's weird because you gotta put a lot of hats on and off, but for me, there's just, again, it's gonna continue to build where DWA is much more necessary because of all the businesses coming in downtown. But I think it's been so helpful. To Dan's point, thank you for the little kudos there, but like with the sponsorship dollars we've been able to raise for Dinner Party, I would argue now we're better than we have been thus far at this point, because I've been able to leverage my relationships and make sure, again, that it makes sense. So when I'm talking to someone, we have a lot of events where there's sponsorship opportunities, but are you putting your dollars in the right place? And that's where I'm at, it's one less person that I get the privilege of meeting with all these people, and how can we help them and partner with them, because, it takes a
Well,
village.
DWA puts all of its money back into downtown
Yeah.
Westfield.
Exactly right.
Chamber has,
Only downtown.
Chamber's not and that's not their
Right.
role.
In fact, we don't do a party on the patio outside those parameters, and we're very specific about that. So I'm excited. we can do
I
more.
view these partnerships, they're important, they bring diversity, they bring great ideas and to achieve
I mean,
great
your
things, it
neighbors-
Yeah.
takes a
they were so
group
much
of
more
people to
efficient
do
to
it
walk
and
west
do
than
what you
were
guys
to
have
take
done,
over
so.
the whole fucking thing.
And us as a finance committee, our committee is responsible for
He was on
reviewing
my side
stuff
for a while.
and looking it over
Yeah.
and questioning those items. Now,
He said we ran a
saying
much
that,
more
John's
efficient
not listening, and I'm gonna
organization.
say something John's probably not gonna like,
Run the
since
whole
he's not
DWA,
listening, I'll
they'd
say
have
it.
that for $1 million
We are
a
just a
year.
finance committee, we're
Yeah.
3 of 7.
Yep.
So
We have no,
we still
we
have
have
the
one
right
half of
to
it.
come in front of us with the mayor's
Mm-hmm.
permission to request for funds. It's whether you wanna go through that and find out if you get a favorable vote or non-favorable vote.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
I'll
we're up
leave.
for that.
Yeah, I'll leave it up to that in regards to, we're just the advisory committee and we were here to question those things and.
According to your point though, you were saying earlier, I think it's actually a good structure of you being, if you will, on shared staff as well. On the two, you see that in communities across the state, across the country, but particularly let's just talk the state, where depending upon their size, the chamber may also be running economic development or site selection type stuff, downtown stuff, Main Street stuff, different things, because it's just a little bit more nimble, or there's some synergies, if you will, where you can share some expenses and it makes more sense.
Yeah.
It can be more effective, so
Yeah.
it does make sense to me, so.
Agreed, and kind of circling back to the Main Street, like
Yeah.
you said, is I think we're not in the position where we have the capacity for that, because there's a lot of things to do, and I've talked to people, and I'm gonna continue to do so, because I think this is a great reset for us too, to have this conversation, because, I think it was like, we were under one understanding, and so to have this, if that's what the next steps are, we're very passionate about what we do, and I think we're only gonna continue to be better at what we do and more efficient, so we are all for that.
Before you move on the agenda item, and hi, I'm Marla Ayler, the clerk treasurer for the city. I just wanted to add that I had done some checking, and to make everyone aware, a not-for-profit that receives governmental funds, sorry. Let me find my phone, that's me buzzing. God, something's worn out here. Ear squelching.
So it kind of.
Sorry. It's my insulin pump ran out. It'll turn off here in 1 second. Sorry, anyway, you are required to file an E1 every year. It has never been filed by DWA. I went back as far as I could, back to 2014, when the entity first started receiving funds. So there's a statutory obligation for any nonprofit who receives governmental funds. It essentially avails you to audit by the State Board of Accounts. So I don't know if that changes how you proceed or not, but it definitely needs to be looked at.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
So, okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
So,
Well,
you're on notice.
no,
But if you need instructions, I would be more than happy to help you.
we are.
Okay, so, go
New
ahead.
person in charge.
Yes.
Yes, so that's right.
Yep.
We of course wanna do everything
new
the way it
person
should
in
be.
You probably wanna get rid of it.
I think, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. If it's okay, we're gonna go ahead and share this information with the other council members and some of the discussion today, and Marla will have type up minutes of the meeting. Marla, do you have Drew's and Dan's and Courtney's information for the minutes?
I don't have Drew's, I have Courtney's and Dan's.
Great.
I don't even know your last name.
Lacey,
Thank you.
L-A-C-E-Y.
Okay. I'll put Drew question mark.
Courtney can send you more information too.
Yep,
Okay,
Yeah, email.
perfect.
And thanks really for the financials.
Yeah.
Really much
course.
appreciated.
yeah,
Brings a lot of clarity, so.
great. Well, thank you for listening to us today.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
That stuff is falling down there.
I had a new ACL.
New ACL.
Thank you guys,
Oh,
thank you.
shit, yeah.
Versus.
Obviously, still be
Thank
working.
you, thank you, appreciate it. Thanks for hearing us. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah. We're trying to know these guys.
See you later.
See you, Courtney. Thanks.
Alright.
And I owe you an answer on that other thing. Yeah, I was good.
That's a good question.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dean.
What's next? Okay. June appropriation report?
So,
Do you wanna do the budget update first or not? That's up to you.
Yeah, we do the budget
It's-
update first.
oh,
whatever.
it's right there.
Budget's
Oh,
next.
it's highlighted in blue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're on schedule for the 2025 budget submissions. We've gotten everybody's budgets in. Thank you to Brady and John Rogers for staying with me on Friday night until about 1:15 in the morning, so that way we can get everything that Mayor needed to leave for vacation, so he can review. We've been meeting one-on-ones with each director, Scott and I, so that is all done. And as Scott reviews this week, the budgets that have been in front of him, we are going to be scheduling with all of the council members one-on-ones as well, to review that starting on August 12th. So that's all in line with the current budget deadline that we have been
So, yeah,
presented.
go into a little bit more detail on that. I forgot, I know you have this long list in front of you.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean? So you and the mayor
We'll meet
can
with-
meet with, can you meet with two council members at a time? And then you're just gonna say, here's what's been submitted by this department and.
We will have a big thick binder for you.
Okay.
And it will probably be anywhere from a 4 to 8 hour meeting with each one of you guys. I mean, it's detailed, right?
Pretty lengthy.
It's
I would say try to pair them up in twos
Yeah, we say, yeah.
and then him go by himself.
We don't want this to.
Map outs 3 days.
It's for 8 hours.
And the goal would be to go through really line by department.
It would be
unless
fund
there's-
by fund, yes, and then you guys can ask questions on that. We have detail on our back end, exactly how we got there. We can go over some of that, like it will be detailed out of like, this is how we got to this number. It won't,
And you'll be looking at both versions, right? The -4 plus the, what do you call it?
we will just be going, Scott and I are doing the -4 in his advancing Westfield plan. And we will be presenting you guys with our final plan.
I'm sorry, say that again. So you're going over them,
Scott and I have been going over the -4 and the advancing Westfield
right?
plan.
Both
Yep,
options.
and then we are coming to you guys with our final plan.
Your final recommendation.
yeah. Mhm.
Which could be one or the other, or a combination of the two, or I'm not
It
following
is
you.
basically every dollar will be assigned, like where it goes. Like, so if there is, say there's $10 million that we have left over from revenues coming in, we're gonna say, we're gonna put $10 million in rainy day. I'm just speculating,
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
right, like, that's
Well, you'll
not how it
probably
is.
do,
But
you'll present the
every
four,
dollar will be accounted
you'll
for.
present the negative 4% budget, the advancing Westfield budget. Have the meeting with all of our council members, take that into account, readjust them.
We will not present the -4 and the advancing to you guys. We will present
Oh,
kind of what our recommendation is to you guys.
I'm not sure I'm aligned with that.
I'd like to see both, I'd be curious of looking at both.
Well, I
Yeah,
can talk to
That's
Scott
why-
about that.
Yeah, I
because-
thought that's why they were being.
Yeah, I'll talk to Scott about that.
I thought they were,
Yeah.
that's why they were being put together. is
Well, it's it was for our end to see kind of what could be cut, how can we look at it, how can Scott and I get to a number
Is that your input?
of,
But
to bring to you guys as
the
council
benefit or
members.
the advantage is to say, hey, we cut $2 million from Caitlin's budget. You were looking over here, that's why.
Yeah, like I have that.
She didn't even have that in her budget.
Have any-
But we cut 4% from Caitlin's budget, and it's been reallocated over here, and this is why.
Right,
And that's what I'd like
Yeah.
to be able to see, so that we go, okay,
I'll talk to
we-
Scott about that.
yeah, you
That's
see what I'm saying?
yeah.
Okay.
Cause how we did it is to look and again, there were departments that were like, that were very honest, they're like, oh, this was a great exercise. To go through the -4, right, and go down to a zero-based budget, because, you know, they didn't see these monies in the light that they had in the past. And there's many directors that are new, right, as well, so they're coming in and, or building a whole new department, like, facilities and events, that one is a beast in itself, because we're taking all of the facilities, utilities, and to that department, rather it being in all these other departments separately, so that, you can't do a -4%, because that department was never there. So there, you know, there's, and then like Brady's, you can't do a -4% because all of workman's comp and health benefits
I
are
get
going
that.
to hers, right? So there was no way to do a -4% for,
You can't do it, yeah, you can't do it across the board,
Correct. but in some line items you can, and we're looking at like,
some line items from departments, and you say, you know, this is no longer a priority, or this is not a priority
Correct.
for 2025, and we're gonna reallocate it. In 2026, this department might get the money back because we're gonna prioritize something else. You can't be everything to everybody.
correct,
There's unique initiatives or so forth that are occurring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's your point.
Even when you look at the June appropriations report and you look at different departments,
right,
some that are new in the department, some that are not new, and those types of, some of them are right on budget, some of them aren't, haven't spent their budget because they don't know what to spend yet.
right,
They haven't figured out we can buy all this other stuff yet. So
Right,
when you
yeah.
look through the appropriation report, you see a lot of that stuff, and I saw, I mean, I've seen that over the years too, that when a new director comes in the first year, there's sometimes less spending. Because they don't,
they're still getting
they're getting ramped up
acclimated,
and
right?
those types of things, so.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
all right,
so I'll talk to Scott about that.
but the week starting August 12th, is what you're saying?
Yes, Peg will be reaching out to you guys, here this week to schedule those one-day meetings. And then we'll give you guys a deadline where you guys have to come back with questions, so that way we can get back to either the directors if we don't know them. But during those meetings will obviously be a very open.
And I'm wondering if we should pair up the council members based on strengths, right? Not just availability, but,
We can have that conversation with them.
We can figure that out, yeah, we'll figure that out.
that makes sense though, just to balance it out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, but we're actually ahead of schedule. John Rogers, you know, why we're sitting here until 1:15 in the morning on Saturday morning, he was like, we're so far ahead compared to
Olden days.
years past.
She was like, are you sure with it? Oh yeah, this is what it takes.
I'm like, I don't feel like
This
it.
is what it takes.
That's great.
Great work.
Anything else on the budgets?
Well, good at this time. I appreciate the hard work you guys have done up to date and keeping on budget, or on timeline too, on schedule, so, thanks. Okay, clerk treasurer's review of monthly review, reports.
Yeah, I would say, since basically the appropriation report is listed twice, just for the sake of time, maybe we skip this one. because the second quarter is this but color coded. So we can go straight to the fund report to stay in order. And I had a question posed to me over the weekend that makes me think maybe I should focus your attention to a certain part of the fund reports and revenue reports. So I'm thinking, Chris, if you could go to like, it's page 4 or 5, once you get into about the 400s, but little more, cause it's the separate section just that starts with investments. It's our like literal, there we go. If you didn't know, maybe you didn't, but all this information is there. So this is gonna show you where I have investments, and when you see investment GS, GS stands for Goldman Sachs, that's basically our government money market account. Investment treasury are monies we have in treasuries. Obviously, those are then going to be a laddered out investment strategy, but also we have 2 treasury notes on behalf of the rainy day fund. They have different maturities, they have different yields, but they still go into one fund. And then we've been sweeping off interest in the past from those. And that's what investment Fed Goldman Sachs rainy day is. So it's a very small amount because maybe you didn't know, we really didn't have a lot of investment strategy prior to 2022. Especially interest rates were 0, so there was not much to invest in. But now we have significant dollars in investments. Again, Goldman Sachs, just to reiterate, is always available within 24 to 48 hours. But when we got the June disbursements, I had decided, based on cash flows through corporate checking, that we didn't have to leave that money just sitting in corporate checking for now. Now, I may end up transferring that back eventually, but I kind of watch our corporate checking balance. And so I did send an extra $20 million over to that fund, but we are making significant interest. Not because we need it necessarily, but we may need it in the long term. And so I just wanted you to know that it is all there. There's always visibility on it. And when you pair this report with the revenue summary, then you really start seeing the fruit of that labor. So, but to look at them independently, I think sometimes it's like, what am I really looking at?
So which column is the interest? The interest is in column,
Well, you're gonna have interest on your revenue summary. And oftentimes that revenue, that interest is just reinvested on a monthly basis, but it depends on how you're wanting to look at it. So if you wanna look at it by month, it's fund, let me give you an example. If you went to the fund summary, Chris, and let me count the pages for you. 2, 3, 4, 5. Page 6 of that PDF, at 434131.
Is it this report?
No, the revenue report, I'm sorry.
Page 6.
It would actually be page 7.
Oh, is it? Did I miss
Yeah,
count?
one more page.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, scroll down to where it starts, 434.
Yep, right there.
Yep. So you can see that in June, we went from $20 million being in Goldman Sachs to $40 million. And then the top of the page, or well, the header on that 221,000 is month to date. And then you have year to date. So that's the money that we've made just on the general fund being invested in Goldman Sachs since the beginning of the year.
Okay.
So, I didn't think there was anything else particularly compelling that jumped out on these. And I don't even know that that was more than I wanted to point out that it is all there. This is as transparent as we get, high visibility on these investments. So, is there anything else in either of those that you really want me to go over with you? Or you wanna look through them in a different light, different lens maybe, and tell me how you'd like to see it differently.
Marla, you put an additional $20 million in the Goldman Sachs account, when, I think you said that.
In
but
June.
June? Okay, so, but we've already netted, if you will, almost $1 million year to date, okay. Got it. That was primarily off the 20. For the year to date number, that was primarily off 20, if you will.
It's primarily off 20, but I mean, I
But
think
because
a
our
lot of
fund
it-
balances are high enough, you feel comfortable putting in, I mean, you can always pull it out whenever you want to,
Yeah.
so. Or
Yeah,
need
can
to, I
send it
should
right
say.
back.
Yeah, they can do it right away.
No, but it's not like extra dollars, it's just dollars I floated,
Yeah,
right?
you're just moving
Yep.
dollars. Understood.
Okay. So,
I may do the same thing, that's all.
right?
Okay, cash balances right now, I mean, you can make some
Marla,
money
just
on
from
stuff.
my knowledge, does this committee have to approve the investment that you do?
No.
Okay, I'm just
So,
for my
Yeah,
knowledge,
yeah.
right?
well, and anybody else too.
Right.
Now, the reserve portion of our reserve policy is a little older. But the way I read it is it says if we had long-term investments, which we don't, the longest treasury that we've got out is to May of 2026. Because by statute, I'm not allowed to invest them for more than 2 years, so they're considered short-term investments. If I were to go any longer than 2 years, I must have council approval. Might be something to consider as you think about, we know interest rates are going to fall, what kind of yield would you like out of that and locked in? But again, how much do you want in reserves? There are a lot of words around, obviously we wanna have a good reserve, but there's no dollar figure or percentage that I have to hold back in true reserves. Treasuries are the safest because they're locked in. The Goldman Sachs account is still yielding 5.20 this week. It's only fluctuated as high as 5.21 and as low as 5.19 the entire year. It just kind of bounces back and forth right there. Corporate checking, we make 3% out of, but to make 5.2 on average or 5.19 on average is extraordinary, so why not get it while it's good? Anyway, so to answer Danielle's question, the 25% reserve in the policy was really in long-term investments, and since we have none, there's no money that can't be accessed relatively soon, but I don't think we want to divest. We did have a treasury that matured this month. It was for 2.5 million. I can't think of the interest off the top of my head right now. I wanna say it was $163,000, but I opted to only reinvest $1 million of that money right now, just because I felt like maybe there's an effort to want to have more money available, like liquid. Don't know if that's true, but overall, we're about 28.5 million in treasuries combined. And that is projected to bring in, at the end of all those maturities, it'd be like $1.6 million, but again, that's over 2 years, so.
Do you meet with Scott on a monthly basis and go through these numbers?
Nope,
We have just scheduled a meeting, Marla and myself and Nathan and Ben to meet monthly. Starting to meet monthly,
like
so.
Nathan has nothing to do with investments.
I know, but
Oh, okay.
just, I mean, just to go over finances, what's coming up,
Gotcha.
right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, these will be discussions that we'll kind of be,
Yeah, I'd highly recommend that.
yeah, having, I mean, as we're both Vince swimming upstream.
Still swimming upstream.
Come on, Marla, we're doing
Right,
this.
so,
And depending on timing, it might not hurt for one of us to join those meetings from time to time if you invite us. Blank copy us and one of us considered attending it. We could learn a lot through that process as well. With the appropriations report, the fund report, and the revenue report, which reports do you send out to all the directors monthly?
the same three I
That's
sent you
Same
guys.
three,
Uh-huh.
okay. And then for the appropriations report, does the city administration, Danielle, you or the mayor, sit down with each of the department heads monthly and kind of go through theirs? Or you just rely on them
We rely on them.
to go through it? Okay.
So anything else on,
Pull up the June
Fund
appropriation report, I got a couple
Yeah.
of
oh,
questions.
well, that's where I was saying the second one's better, it's the same as the first, it's
I want
just
the
in
first
color.
one.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, the directors are responsible for managing their own department budgets. You know, I get a report from John on usually after closeout of each month, like where we are at on percentage of that, of each fund line item, just to make sure like we're not either way over or what's going on just on some items.
This one's a little different than the one I'm looking at. Go back up to the top, make it a little smaller.
are you looking at the color coded one?
Nope.
Oh.
My color coded one that I did.
What's the date on the corner? It looks like it's 7/18 up there in the corner. What's yours? Is that the right?
17/10/36. So a new one was posted after the one I pulled down.
There was only one minor change and it shouldn't have made,
Okay, maybe that's why,
Much
because I
look
had some
different.
questions in there, there were some errors or some,
oh, the one with the
the
The code
13s, the
errors.
40s, and, yeah. Negative 1.14E-13.
oh, yeah, those were just Excel coding errors.
Okay.
Sorry, I did find them and had Nisha correct them,
Okay.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll have to go back and look through it. Okay, so make it fit the page. Alright. So under the admin and consultant line, it's negative 119,000 in the whole. Is that, are you guys gonna be coming back and asking for additional appropriations within the line, or are you gonna stay, cause you should be around 49.58% for the year, and you're at 72% of your budget spent already.
With the additional appropriations, we should be fine.
Okay.
I'll double check on all that, but yeah,
Well, these numbers include current budget with additionals, so I think just consulting probably wasn't, I think you're looking at services. See how far you are, how much you have in services. So some of that may be getting allocated
wrong
to the wrong lines.
wrong lines, yeah.
Okay.
However, just from my perspective, not a huge deal because it's interdepartment. So a lot of times we would wait until the end of the year and rather than do an additional appropriation, we just cover what has been appropriated already.
I'm guessing it was just
And really,
coded.
even the clerk treasurer's was the same way, just because
And
there's,
it's all in the 300 series.
yeah. And then it's like consulting versus services. Well, at one point it said consulting services.
Right.
So, anyway,
And I noticed on a couple, as you go through the report, workers' comps in the hole on a bunch of them too are negative. Is
Yes.
That's normal. They're
It's
always
normal.
like a month behind.
There's only 2 payments a year for
Yes.
so.
yeah, only 2 a year, however, I'll speak for myself, I think we've already spent all of ours, so there was an adjustment on our budget going forward, but the total there was like $975. So we'll probably be able to cover that out of something else, but that's that
Page 3.
kind of game, and then where you get into saying like, hey, you know, we wanna tackle this for you guys for the budget and get it right. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so under parks promotions, $957 or 957% in the hole. I assume that's probably the same, maybe the park services line below it,
Probably.
in the wrong line.
And again,
They're, within budget, they're good.
yeah, within budget, and it could be also, right, this is also a new department,
Yep,
so he's probably trying to figure out,
yep.
Lots of new lines.
Lots of new
in his
lines.
department, yeah.
That's where I was saying maybe, I do this, I do this monthly with our accounting. And they go through it with each of the project managers to kind of go through all your spend, where you're at, what lines you're hitting, are you hitting the appropriate lines? Even appropriate lines within a client's lines associated with that, so. It's very detailed on the business side of the business, and you gotta be correct and accurate with your clients, so. Not to say this necessarily has to be that, but it's, does
if you
help.
can find me about 40 more hours in my
Yeah.
80-hour work week, I would appreciate that, and I would be more than happy to sit down with everybody to do that.
IT's way in the hole for some reason, I don't know what they're doing. They're not bad, 46%, 46.75.
That's pretty normal,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Front loading.
Very front loaded with software, so.
No, overall, I looked through all the lines and there's a lot more green than red. A lot, even the ones I had red were like 47 or 46%, so not too far off in them, so.
Can we go to the other one that's the same, that's color coded, and then I'll tell you how I color coded it, and we'll see if it matches what you thought
There you
seemed
go.
reasonable. There we go.
Fit the page.
So big. Oops.
I can see it. Can you see it? Can you guys see it?
All right, so here's what I did. If you had more than half of your budget left halfway through the year, you're green. If you had between 40% and 49%, you were yellow. And if you were lower, less than 39%, you turned red.
Is this what you sent to the directors?
I actually didn't send, I don't think I sent this to the directors, I just
This
put
would
it
be a good
online.
one to send them.
That would be fine, I mean, obviously, we can send it. This was the quarterly report that had been requested by last council, that I think we discussed it and
Yeah.
you said, yeah, that'd be pretty good for us too. So, anyway, yes, I think it is very helpful, and it's also, good to hang on to as we roll into budget season, knowing who's a little top heavy and maybe who's already using zero-based budgeting.
What's, go to the last line, what's the total summary come to?
So the total summary
I know.
is not going to be accurate.
Yes.
That's by and large because RDC wrote no budget. So they drag all the numbers down because everything is zero. They didn't budget, it looks like they have nothing left, but again, they're cash basis, so they do have money, they have $12 million. But this is how this
Full year
report
budget,
works.
right?
Pardon?
K is full year budget.
I'm sorry.
K, column K is
Oh,
the full year budget, right?
Yes, K is the full and current.
With-
Yeah, it's
with
got
the-
all the appropriations in it and everything, okay, thank you. That's-
Sure. Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you send it out in the future, add just another line there below the 30.14% and put in there, pulling out the RDC stuff to show what the true number is.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you that I had the time to add footnotes. And the
Send
problem
me the
is,
Excel spreadsheet.
I don't.
All right.
But again.
I just asked for 40 more hours a week, I mean, come on, Marla.
I know.
Ask
You
for
said,
two.
yeah, I'll put
We'll
more
both
color
be
codes
okay.
in
You
here.
guys are missing the whole boat. You asked for additional appropriation from other people.
Well,
Well, we've been,
and to be clear, and Marla would tell you the same thing, you wanna be careful, cause you're commingling funds
Correct,
when you're looking at that bottom line.
correct.
You are commingling funds, you're right. Because so much of it too, I mean, unless we
I mean, that's what she's
remove.
the point you're making with the RDC.
Right,
Yeah.
all the non-DLGF lines from it. I don't know, and we could do, if we're doing this report, we could do DLGF funds only. I kind of track those on my own, just to see like, well, how much has the budget changed? And so, you know, one thing I get a little nervous about is our payroll increases, cause we're adding a lot of people constantly, so I compared the first 6 months of last year to the first 6 months of this year, and I'm happy to do those things for you. I just don't know what you guys want. And if you said, hey, we'll take anything you're working on, like, that's fine. But I don't wanna give you stuff you don't care to look at either, cause I don't find any of it a waste of time. I feel like it's my responsibility to know. But if you can be a little more specific on how you'd like things to look, I'm happy to do that. I just need to find a finite way, and we can improve things always. But we've been, I couldn't have imagined I would have been this busy, to be honest. So, and it's not a lament, it's just, it is what it is, and we're trying to move through it with a whole lot of grace that you guys give us, so thank you, but make things better every month. We'll do what's asked of us, but if you have specifics, please let me know.
So are you requesting to pull out the RDC?
Like, pull out all the non-DLGF funds that wouldn't track on general fund stuff?
I've got this Excel spreadsheet, let me play around with it.
Okay, sure.
Are you using an equation at the end if it's between certain percentages and stuff and color coding them out? So I was hoping you weren't going line by line and changing.
Oh,
the
God,
color.
no.
Thank you. And you would, if you were doing that, you'd have a lot more time on your hand if you weren't.
Right. Right.
Okay. I think that's all I've got for today's meeting. John?
I thought we had talked about the RDC budget, having that discussion, didn't we?
At this meeting?
Well, yeah, because you're working on the 2024 RDC budget.
We are. And we're starting the 2025 budget. We have a meeting, we're putting everybody together, I believe, August 15th.
Okay.
Everyone's getting together the finance team is getting together to look at the 2025 and the 2024.
Yeah, and my suggestion was just to bring this team up to speed on the fact that the RDC and yourself were working on a 2024
Yeah,
budget.
Janelle sent out a meeting request, does the executive director today, that said we are pulling everybody together August 15th to talk about both those budgets.
That's the RDC.
That's the RDC budget, Janelle
Yeah,
is the,
we were on that request or not?
no, this is internal.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Janelle and I had like discussed them, to be honest, but the new requirement is that the RDC have an approved budget for 2025 in December. By the time maybe that they meet and get it together, if it's August or September, it has, other than to try and help her, which is why I changed the treasurer's report on RDC. I mean, it's a lot of work to put together a budget for 3 months. So I felt satisfied that we got you as long, you know, if you're running cash through it, because it is through the RDC. But I think they're wanting to get a better vision of when are these bond payments due, and do we wanna continue to pay them out of TIF, or are we going to take them to lit? And those decisions are all theirs from an internal perspective. I get that, but for this reporting, as long as there's money, we're like, it doesn't put my office in a
I
jam.
think, I think she mentioned that, Marla, that she was really focusing on 2025
Yeah,
to try to pull that together,
yeah.
to your point, so
Yeah.
that by the end of the year, it's gone through all the hearings and has been approved.
Yes, it has to, cause the statute changed.
So, but does that answer your question, John? Kinda, maybe?
Well, yeah, I completely understand what's going on. I just thought it
Okay.
would be beneficial for the finance committee to
ready till what, October, November?
It's our first meeting on the 15th, so, yeah, I mean, it
Or
literally
finalized.
for the 2025 budgeting process, right? Because we're on a different schedule than as Marla mentioned, the DLGF funds, that's a totally different schedule than the RDC funds, right? So by the end of the year, we have to have the RDC done. The DLGF is, what's the date, the drop dead on that? It's like October 31st, right?
November 1st.
November 1st, yeah, so different timeline, so we've prioritized, as Danielle said, we really prioritized last week, getting all the DLGF stuff in front of Scott and Danielle. And then, now that we've got that going, we'll start to prioritize our time so that we can get the RDC stuff.
Got it.
Okay.
So the RDC last year didn't even do a budget for this year.
Correct.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
Which I think we've already known for 60 days, so, okay.
Administration comments, Danielle, and I guess one question for you would be, okay, the council members a reminder, but for the budget, first reading and second reading, they have to be present at those meetings, be able to vote on. If you're not at the first one, you can't vote on the second one, isn't that right?
I can't answer that question.
I've never heard of that, but to vote on a budget, you have to be there in person, that's what I know. I can look into the other question, but that doesn't ring a bell.
That doesn't ring a bell. You have to be in
Law
person
that
to
I've
vote.
looked at.
Yeah, you have to be in person to vote, but I think the first, second reading piece is moot, I believe,
Me too.
but.
Okay.
I'll check, but I've never heard of that.
Okay, just check on that, but it might, and that, maybe just Danielle, just maybe an email reminder out to the councils on when you plan on bringing that projected date out, so they can keep a hold on that, make sure they're gonna be present for it, as well as, and let them know it's subject to change as well, but at the same time, that's when you're projecting, you plan on bringing the budget to that.
So the
meeting
week,
for final
the second week of August is your target to get with counselors individually or in pairs, I should
Yes.
say.
August 12th?
The week of.
August 12th? Which is good, cause, yeah, go on the 19th.
So our,
You
be all
You have a projected
goal.
date yet on the, you have a projected date when you bring it to the council for final reading?
For final reading, well, just for the draft that we had submitted, would be, the final date for adoption is October 16th now.
No, that's required by
Right, that's the final
statute, by
date.
law, but I
But
mean,
our second reading that we would look at would be October 14th. Now, again, that could be moved up just depending on how fast we move through this process.
so theoretically, the month of September, we can finish this budget process, if you will.
I hope so.
So ideally, that would be kind of our time frame. In case there's a hiccup, you push it one day. I don't, personally, I don't wanna push it at all into October. I think if we can get our heads together on the week of the 12th, it's gonna take a lot of work, but, then finalize everything in the month of September. First reading, second reading pieces, presentations, what have you. I mean, that would be the clean way to do it. I don't wanna be looking at asking the LGF or anybody else for extensions for a budget.
We won't be asking for any.
I know we won't, but let's set it up that way, that we have no issues doing it. So, that'd be good.
Okay, clerk treasurer comments?
I've got nothing, like I said, if you have anything though with specificity you need me to do, you just let me know. Lots of time. Big time.
Comments?
No, not that.
John?
No other comments.
Okay, hearing none, motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Favor aye? Closed.
Don't ask that.
I'm not asking that with Chad.